Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another in a series of webinars designed for departments of transportation. I'm Terry Bills, and I'm the Transportation Industry Manager here at Esri, and today I'm joined by Stuart Rouse, a Solution Engineer on our transportation team. And today's webinar is focused on how to quickly and effectively conduct a damage assessment after a natural disaster. As we head into the beginnings of hurricane and the fall storm season, we thought it would be inappropriate to highlight some of the common workflows that we have observed related to conducting damage assessments and how you can expedite recovery management through ArcGIS. But before we begin, I'd like to point out that we're recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. And you can type your questions into the question box. We'll try to answer as many as time allows. Additionally, the slides, which are part of this webinar, will be available to you on the GeoNet group, Departments of Transportation, and we'll give you the link at the end of the webinar. So with climate change and greater climate variability, highway agencies are going to be facing an increased number of natural disasters in the future years. We're now just entering hurricane season in the southeast, with the current forecast calling for a normal hurricane season, whatever that means. Last year, two major storms made landfall, Florence and Michael, which together caused over between $8 billion and $16 billion of damage. At the same time this year, we also witnessed the flooding in the Midwest caused by the wettest January through May in recorded history in the Midwest. Portions of I-29 in both Iowa and Missouri were under as much as 15 feet of water. And current estimates of those damages are north of $3 billion. Closer to home here in California, the 2018-2019 fire season was the worst in California's history, with over $3.5 billion in damages. And in the immediate aftermath of these events, it's the responsibility of the DOTs to start an initial inspection and an assessment of the damages. And having the right tools in the field can make a huge difference in the efficiency of the damage assessment workflow and help derive quicker cost estimates for reporting. And secondly, DOTs need to make assessments of which roadways can be made serviceable with temporary repairs and which are going to require more significant restoration. Understanding which communities may be cut off and calculating revised evacuation routes or accessibility routes are all part of this process. And in that regard, we have worked with FEMA to use our network analyst routing capabilities to understand the consequences of blocked roadways and bridges and their impact on communities. And finally, in many instances, damage assessments necessarily involve an engineer for structural inspections, and ensuring the right resources are assigned to specific tasks is all part of the damage assessment workflow. What we hope to show you today is how these processes can be made more efficient with ArcGIS. So for that, I'm going to turn it over to Stuart for a comprehensive demo. So Stuart, take it away.
All righty, thank you, Terry. All right, so again, thank you, Terry. Thank you, everyone, for showing up for this webinar. So today, I will be demonstrating the full damage assessment workflow, from the initial inspections to submitting a Federal Highway Administration damage inspection report. During this demo, I will be playing several different roles. I will be a resident engineer that will perform the initial inspection, a dispatcher that will handle giving assignments to specialists, a structural engineer that will be inspecting a bridge, a manager who is in charge of overlooking all of the work being done, and finally, the person responsible for generating and sending the damage inspection report to the FHWA. So this here is the workflow. So let's begin as the resident engineer. So a report has come in from local authorities that a bridge near mile marker 24 on I-69 has been damaged in a weather event. So we're going to open up Explorer for ArcGIS here, and we're going to perform a search. We're going and we're looking for I-69 mile marker 24. So we see this here. So we're going to tap that, and it will show us that location here on the map. So we'll click it. So we see where it is on the map. And so now we need to navigate to it. And to do that, we can tap the directions button. And now we have the option to choose Navigator for ArcGIS and Apple Maps. We're going to choose Navigator, mostly because of its offline capabilities. So during a disaster scenario, there's a chance that cellular service will not be available. So this uses only GPS for the navigation. The data is preloaded, and other data sets that are proprietary to your organization can be overlaid on top of the base map, like service roads and other data that's not commercially available in other GPS systems. So we'll choose Navigator, and that will pop us over to Navigator for ArcGIS, excuse me. And we see our starting location here at the bottom of the screen, and we see our ending location. It gives us turn-by-turn directions here in text, and also it provides by voice. So we can
starting navigation. Go north on South Garden Street toward Washington Avenue. In half a mile, turn right on John Street. In a quarter of a mile, turn right on John Street.
So just like other navigation apps, we do have the voice turn by turn. So finally, let's say that we get there. So we are at mile marker 24 on I-69. And we need to determine which bridge it is that's damaged. So as we look a little further north, we see, oh, okay, well, here's the bridge in question. So we tap that bridge. It brings up the two items there, and we'll look at the bridge specifically. We've got a little bit of pre-populated information, some of the LRS information, the asset ID numbers. So now we would like to begin our assessment. So we tap the Assess Damage link. That's going to bring us over to a Survey 123 application. This has been configured to assist with the damage assessment. So we see some pre-populated fields here. We've got the asset ID, the date and time, the phone number of the person doing the inspection, and the identity of the inspector. So we're going to choose a role. So we're going to say that we are the resident engineer, and this will be our initial response. And some other information that's been pre-populated, for example, like the location information given the county route, the route number, road name, reference markers, and latitude and longitude. We're going to, right here for the road status, we're going to say that the road status is that is impassable, and the restriction is going to say damaged. And for the comments, we will dictate whatever our observations. So the road has significant damage. So that's finished. And so we'll pop down here to the damage feature. So since we were since we were brought to this survey from Explore, from a bridge feature, that's already checked for us. And we will check closed due to total failure. And so for here, the comments, we're going to put here, so it looks like an entire section of the bridge has collapsed, period. We are going to need someone out here as soon as possible. So that's finished. And so now we want to attach a photo. And we will come here, attach a picture. As we can see, significant damage. And here in the permanent, we're going to say that the rough order of magnitude is going to be a permanent repair. So let's just call that about 5.5 million. And then also, since we are the resident engineer, we're going to specify what's a few specialists that we believe will be necessary to help fix some of the things that we've seen. So we'll check off roadway engineer and structural engineer. So we will submit this assessment as the resident engineer. Send now. All right. So far, we have received a notification of damage and we performed the initial inspection. Now we're going to change roles and become the dispatcher who will be in charge of getting specialists out into the field. So the resident engineer has submitted a damage assessment for a bridge, and now we need to prioritize and assign that work to the correct specialist. So if I look at my email, an email just came in and says, hello, there's been a damaged bridge. Please dispatch a structural engineer to perform an assessment. All right, so this email was automatically generated when the assessment is completed. And also the image that was taken is attached to this image. To this email. And also a link has been provided to take us to the work order, excuse me. So this is going to pop up and we see the and so this is in workforce, this is the dispatcher view. So we can see exactly where this assessment where the work order is, and also we can go ahead and assign it to somebody. Oh, and also we've got that image was also attached to this particular work order, so we can see exactly the same thing that the resident engineer saw during his initial inspection. So let's edit this, and now we need to assign it to someone, and we are going to assign it. Let's assign it to me. The priority, we're going to set it to critical since the damage was exceptionally bad. And let's give us a little bit of time to perform to perform the assessment. Well, no, let's get out there a little bit sooner. So we'll save this. All righty. So let's see where we are in the workflow. So right now, we worked on dispatching, and now it's time for the specialist to go out into the field. In this case, the structural engineer to go out and perform his or her assessment. All right, so let's bring back our iPad. So we see up here at the top, there was a notification stating that a critical work order was assigned to us. So the first thing that we need to do is tap on it so we can take a look at it. And now we need to acknowledge that we have received this work order. So we click the acknowledge button here. And as we can see, this little tag went from not acknowledged to acknowledged. That way, everybody is on the same page, and now we know that that the structural engineer has received this work order. So let's click start. And then let's navigate to this particular work site. So again, we can click go.
Starting navigation.
And that'll take us there.
South
So let's go ahead and stop
Garden
this really
Street,
quick
Fort
here.
Street.
Let's go back to where we were. So now let's assume that, okay, now we're at the site. And so now it's time to perform our assessment. So we'll click on this button here again, same button that takes us that allows us to navigate. Now we are going to perform our assessment. So we'll do survey at site. It brings back to the same survey 123 survey, and a lot of the same things are here. It's pre-populated with the asset ID, date and time, the inspector. This time, we're going to select our role to be the structural engineer, and then we're going and because of the damage that we see, we're going to say, okay, we need some permanent repairs here. We'll come back down to the damage feature, click on bridge, and we're going to say total failure. Total failure again. And this time for comments, we're going to put in something a little different. The previous bridge was built for a 50-year flood, period. The new bridge will be built for a 500-year flood, period. Alrighty. And so now we're going to, so since we're going to build a stronger bridge that should last longer, we're going to say that the repair, just permanent repair, should cost a bit more. So let's go with 12. Let's go with 12,500,000, and we'll submit this damage assessment. So let's jump back over here. Hide the mobile application. Here we go. So let's talk about what we've done so far. So resident engineer received the notification, went out into the field, performed the initial inspection. A dispatcher dispatched a specialist, in this case, a structural engineer, to go out and perform their assessment. The assessment was performed and submitted. The next thing that we want to do, so now the role that we'll take on is as a manager. So, so you want to see the current status of the work orders, both that are in progress and completed, or otherwise. You also want to have, you kind of want to get a good idea about where work is getting done, and if the work is being done by the assigned deadlines. So let's come out of here, and we're going to come to this application here. So this is a dashboard that is that's showing all of our that's showing all the work that's being done here in this location. So we can see down here at the bottom, we're getting a good overview without really having to dig in too far. So we're seeing down at the bottom here, 13 total work orders open, 4 work orders have been completed. We're doing good because we have no work orders that have been open for longer than 10 days, and none that are past due. And we can take a look at all the assignments here on the right-hand side. If we wanted to, we could go to individual work orders. And also this is good. So we can see that this one is this is the one that we just performed. And we see that it's in progress. So so this is pretty good if you need to remind someone, say, hey, I see that you submitted your work order. I'm sorry, your assessment, but you forgot to set your status to finish. So you can use that to kind of update it. So we can tap finish. So I just finished it, and that should change. Also, if we wanted to here we go, it just changed to completed. So So we can filter by the status. So for example, unassigned, we can take a look at all the unassigned, take a look at the ones that have been assigned, in progress, and so on and so forth. Also, we can filter by time. So how long they've been open a day, 7 days, so on, and again, different options here. All this is configurable for you to do whatever it is that you would like to do. So, and down here, we've got a couple of tabs here that also filter. We can take a look here at a nice handy little bar graph. Again, this is all about getting information out quickly, and being able to digest and make decisions based on the information here. All right. So back here. So again, initial inspections, dispatch specialist, specialist inspection. Now we're looking at monitoring the events here. And now we want to build FHWA reports to get reimbursed for the funds that we spend. So to do that, here we have an application that performs multiple actions. Previous assessments can be edited to improve their accuracy, or they can be deleted if they're no longer needed. So it's full, so this is fully editable. Whatever you need to do can be done from this from this small application here. Again, this is a configurable web app builder application. So first, we would like to capture all the damaged areas that will be a part of a site. So this is so this application is kind of configured to be a site builder application. So we'll zoom into the area that we performed an assessment at earlier, and we can see that here we have two areas that we're going to include in our site. So this is one here, and so then also we're going to select these, and then we're going to report. And now we see that we have 3 damage assessments because 2 were stacked at the bridge because we made a request for a structural engineer and for a roadway engineer, which is why some of the data is not populated. So as we see, here is the information that will be included, and now it's time to actually draw a polygon that is going to actually represent our site. So using the edit widget, we can start to draw a polygon. And now this is the polygon that will represent our site. So for the location, we've got some information that we're going to input. We've got the location, we've got a specific damage number that will drop in here, a route number. We've got the state, which is Indiana, the county, which is Gibson, the route ID right here. Okay. And then we've got we've got 2 different beginning references. So we can say from 3.02 and then all the way, not all the way, but a little bit further up to 3.47. So these are the areas here. So now we have created our site. And all right, so now it's time to create a report based on that site. So we've got some partners at GeoCortex who created this widget that will that is going to assist with the report generating process. So as this spins up, when we click on the box, that data will be sucked into the widget, and then some of the data will be pre-populated, as we'll see here in a second. So we're good to go. We can click on this polygon. And so let's create a report from the information that we have here. So so now we need to, so as I said, some of the information is pre-populated. So we're going to give this a report number and a work order number. And again, these can be whatever they need to be for you. So now, pre-construction is project phase. We want to select some of these options here. And again, we're going to go with permanent repair. And so now the inspection date was today. And then let's go next. Now here we can input whatever quantities that are needed. So we're going to drop in a couple things here, and hope so what we'll see is that as we enter these, the costs will be updated here on the right hand side along with the total. So that's major earthwork items, and then let's come down to bases and pavements. Put in a couple more things here. Now this isn't going to add up to the full 10 million that I suggested earlier, because that would take a lot of time, just copying and pasting and dropping stuff in like that. So let's just stop right there. So we go next, and so now here's a little summary of everything that we've input, and we can click save to generate the report. So the form that's generated here is the actual form that needs to be submitted to the FHWA for reimbursement. So then we can click here, we can take a look, and all of the information that is needed is populated. So we've got the location here, Route I-69, the milepost 24, the report number, inspection date, everything that we would assume should be there, and then all of the information as far as pricing is down here as well. So this allows you to double check and recheck everything that you need. So if you do see a problem, you should be able to pop back, adjust the numbers inside of the widget, and then create the report again. And then once you get ready, you can go ahead and download it, and then put all the correct signatures and dates that are needed, and then send it on off. Okay. So this workflow provides the ability to use mobile devices in the field to perform damage assessment at the site. That information is now in a environment where the report can be generated without having any concerns about the loss of information during the entire process. The process is user friendly from the initial data collection on through to the form generation. So it mimics the complete process that a DOT would have to go through when assessing the damage in the field to requesting funds from the FHWA. So yeah, so that's the end of that. Back to you, Terry.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stuart. We'll open it up for questions. We do have a number of questions that have come in. The first question, I think, had to do with wanting to know about the route number, and perhaps you could discuss the integration with LRS in the application.
Well, let's say, all right, yeah. So Explorer doesn't understand LRS, so the data is actually baked into the route, right? So that's where that information is coming from.
All right, so that's pre-populated then.
Right. Yes. It is. It is pre-populated.
Okay. And then I guess there's a question about, and I think this really gets to the issue of the costing, and how do you estimate or how do you capture some of the other peripheral costs, some of the emergency costs such as detours and so forth that would be associated with the route.
Hey, Eric, you want to jump in here and help?
Yeah. So Stuart, when Stuart showed this demonstration filling in the FHWA report, that workflow came from a workflow we're implementing with Colorado Department of Transportation. And by the way, my name's Eric Erdenberg. I'm a solution engineer with Esri and the app lead for a project we're doing with Colorado DOT. And when we basically what we did is we took all of their costing information related to the various quantities of materials, equipment hours that go into the cost of a project. So that's just another item. Any costs related to detours that can be baked into those tables as well, so that when I'm selecting all the different materials, the equipment hours, the cost of hauling equipment in, materials in, I can also select the option of adding state police to run the detours, and all the signage for the detours. That can just be one more component that's baked into the costing. And again, that's just a series of tables. CDOT gave us tables on earthworks. They gave us tables on materials, on structures, and then we provided all that information to GeoCortex, and then they configured the report. And we gave them the copy of the 1547 FHWA form that Stuart showed there at the end, with all the costing information baked into it. Again, we gave them the paper form and they turned that into the exact replica, which then all the data that we choose it just pours into that report once it's created. So really, the report is completely configurable. Any costs that maybe Stuart didn't show, like running a detour, that could all be easily baked in, and with very little effort.
Right, and one would assume, I mean, obviously costs vary state by state, so each state generally already has many of those costs pre-calculated. So as you said, it's really incorporating a table of typical costs that would go into that.
And Stuart didn't really show this. He showed adjusting the quantities, but he could have also adjusted the unit price for some of those materials. So like, for instance, getting riprap into a canyon, like back in the 2013 floods in Boulder, or around the Boulder area in Greeley in Region 4 of CDOT, they had to be flexible with their costing. Some of the things that they had to get into those canyon areas cost more than it would if they were in the Front Range. So not only were the units important to be adjustable, but the unit cost was also a key component. And he didn't show it, but it is actually possible to adjust that unit cost. So if something costs $30 a cubic yard and to get it into the canyon costs $45 a cubic yard, he could have changed that unit cost. And then when he entered his quantity, it would have adjusted appropriately based on that new updated unit cost. So that form is flexible, completely flexible in those costing values as well.
Okay, and the next question, can this cover county-wide actions? So maybe you can speak to how you really define the geography and what supported geography, how large of an extent that can be.
Yeah. So Stuart, if you don't mind, I'll answer this one too.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So the site was a concept that CDOT introduced to us when they were working on US 36 in the Grand Thompson Canyon. One of the Big Thompson River, rather, sorry, Big Thompson River. When they were working on US 36 in the canyon, one of the requirements was they wanted to be able to take and they wanted to be able to take all these different damage locations, and there were multiple damage locations. I think the overall project was something like $200 million to repair all of that roadway in the canyon. Their requirement was any damage that was within line of sight of another set of damage, that became a site. And so they had multiple damage locations that were linked together into a site because they were all within line of sight of each other. And that's where that site concept came into play. It easily could be an entire county. He could have defined the geometry as the county as well. I mean, the tool is flexible enough in that you can configure pre-existing polygons, or in the case of what Stuart just did, he created a new polygon, and the GeoCortex tool was listening to that feature service. And when that polygon was committed, when the edit was saved, then it just became another polygon accessible to GeoCortex that it could use to pull data from. So certainly, and then the smart editor, he didn't show this, but in the smart editor, he could have configured it to pull the county name and the state name, and he could have pulled from multiple geometries to get attributes from those geometries and populate that site polygon, so so that he didn't have to manually enter all that stuff in. And that's just an out-of-the-box widget that's available with Web App Builder, the smart editor. So pretty much so this entire workflow can be configured.
Okay, so and that leads into the next question that we have, which is really about the GeoCortex widget. And can you, and I think Colin may be on the line, can you both speak to how that would be available and how organizations could acquire that that application?
Yeah. So
sure, Eric. Do you want me to speak to that, or do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead and speak to the GeoCortex piece, and then I can speak to the Web App Builder component.
Okay. So so what you were seeing there were two components as part of the GeoCortex offerings. One was GeoCortex workflow, and that was the step-by-step forms that you saw while walking the user through collecting the report information and costing. That's GeoCortex workflow, and the other component is GeoCortex reporting. That was responsible for generating the actual print-ready PDF. So both those components are available as either standalone applications, so you can purchase them as is, or you can purchase what's called a GeoCortex Web App Builder Edition, which gives you access to workflow, reporting, and printing, which is an offset. We didn't demonstrate that today. Those are the three components that are available right now for the Web App Builder Edition. And you can get a hold of the GeoCortex account rep in your area, probably best through your Esri account manager, and they can give you the costing and the details on how to license the software.
And then Eric, you want to maybe speak to how somebody, if they were interested, could really sort of put this entire workflow together? Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, so Esri is putting together we're working to put together a package basically where Esri could come on site. We could configure this workflow through tech transfer, meaning we would work directly with GIS people. We would work directly with emergency management people. I know in the case of CDOT, we are working specifically with, we're working with some folks in Region 4. And then we are also working with GIS, and we are working with CDOT management to put together this application. And as Stuart showed, it's a combination of multiple apps all working together. So we configure Explorer with the offline map capability and the linkages that go to basically the hot link, the hyperlink that calls survey 123 and passes all the attributes about the asset into it. We customize the form, the damage assessment form, which includes the initial response, emergency repairs, permanent repairs. And then we can, of course, configure the workforce component, which would allow that resident engineer who is on site to establish what the initial response is, to call on other specialists when they need them. So Stuart showed that he could call in any number of specialists, and then that goes to workforce. We use workforce to basically manage those human resources, those specialists we need to come on site and basically track what needs to be inspected. And then from there, the site builder and the reporting was done all through GeoCortex, which, you know, we can work closely with GeoCortex to make that happen. So we're working to put together a package to do this, and of course it's all configurable, so someone could do it themselves if they as long as they know what that workflow looks like. Could certainly do it themselves, but we have become really knowledgeable in this area and would certainly love to help anybody who is interested in deploying this type of solution.
Okay, and we'll leave it open for a couple more questions. Let's see. Let's see. We've got one here. Excuse me. I'm not sure that we can answer this one. It's how do you get a federal highway to pay for a bridge redesign from a 50-year storm to a 500-year storm? Well, if you come up with that answer, we'd love to know, Jim. so let's see. Is it configurable to submit damages to FEMA? There's a question.
Yeah.
Eric.
So.
Yeah, go ahead.
FEMA, yeah. So the FEMA form is a little bit, so it's an Excel form, and Colin, you might be able to help me with this. I should have the ability. The FEMA form is multiple tabs, if I'm not mistaken, and generally speaking, CDOT will get reimbursed, or I'm sorry, DOTs will get reimbursement from FEMA when any structure is destroyed because of an event, like a building structure, generally, I think is the rule. So Colin, just curious, if I were to pass data into the FEMA Excel spreadsheet, is that something we could also mimic and recreate and push data into multiple tabs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm envisioning would be, I expect there's already an Excel spreadsheet that's available, or that users are working with, and being able to upload that spreadsheet and then use that as, for example, if there was already some data that had been inputted, and using that as part of the process. With the end result, having, stepping the user through whatever needs to be done for processing, either geoprocessing or otherwise. And then at the end of that, sending them back a completed Excel workbook with the appropriate tabs filled in with the data that's required. So that's completely feasible with workflow, GeoCortex workflow.
And I again, just want to, oh, go ahead, Terry. Sorry.
So I was going to say there really may be different overlapping areas of responsibility. Federal highways, I believe, is responsible for one set of, whereas perhaps FEMA is responsible for a different set of roads. So again, that's something that this application is really not meant to address, but.
So I will say this though, at CDOT, I know that is something that we are looking at as well. And I brought Colin in because I knew that was something we were going to be undertaking later on down the road. So Initially, our first phase at Colorado is to help them get FHWA forms created because that's their biggest need. The bulk of their submission is to FHWA, or at least in the past with the 2013 floods and some of the other events that they've had to deal with. The initial task and challenge has always been dealing with the FHWA submissions, and then the secondary tasks to that, kind of the phase 2 of this, is or really phase 3 of this. We're actually starting phase 2 with FHWA. The phase 3 task would be to get the FEMA forms wired up so that they can make submissions on things like buildings and debris clearance and things like that. So those are all workflows we are looking at.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, I think that ends the questions. So we'd like to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. There will be a brief little survey afterwards if you want to know more or have anyone reach out if you have additional questions. We'd be happy to answer those, and we can arrange for more detailed demos if that's of interest to you. So again, I want to thank Stuart, Eric, and Colin today, and thank you all for attending, and we hope we'll see you next month at next month's DOT webinar. So thanks again. All right, bye-bye.